Okay.
Is it on?
Just hold it down.
We're going to get back together after a little 5-minute break. We only have 2 more big topics for you, and then we'll have plenty of time at the end for questions, and then you'll be free to go. So we're almost there on the home stretch. Again, I'm Martha Walker, sometimes known as Margaret. But I'm going to be discussing Title IV with you this afternoon. So we'll get more into Title IV and what it's meant for, and just everything that you need to know. So this may be a refresher for the majority of you in here. And for some of our new folks, you might have a lot of questions. So hopefully you can find that veteran or come and speak to us if you have any questions about Title IV. So Title IV is authorized under the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965, as reauthorized as the Every Student Succeeds Act. And the South Carolina Department of Education first introduced this grant as the 18 Title IV grant. So in general, the department allocates the Student Support and Academic Enrichment Program funds to states by formula based on each state's share of funds under Title I. And then the state awards these sub-grants to the LEAs by formula in the same proportion as to the LEA's prior year's Title I allocation. So the main thing to note here is that we push the majority of the Title I funds out. So we can have that state administration reservation at 1%, state activities at 2%, and then 90% of the funds are going to be pushed out to the districts. So this is just the period of performance. I won't spend too much time on this. Finance people touched on this, but each grant is that 2-year period. Coming up this year, we have the 22 grant closing September 23, and then you'll see that the others close September 30th in 24 and 25. Your GAN will be emailed to your superintendent, so those new coordinators, make sure that you get a copy of that, ask them to forward it. You'll see that period of performance information on the left side of the GAN. And the state's fiscal year ends June 30th, and claims through June 30th of each year must be submitted in GAPS by August 15th. So supplement, not supplant with Title IV. Title IV funds may be used only to supplement educational programs, activities provided with the state and local funds. So they come on top of what you are already doing. And the LEA may not use Title IV funds to pay for activities that, in the absence of these funds, would be provided with state and local funds. So the same supplement, not supplant rules apply to Title IV. So record retention. You'll need to make sure that you keep your financial and programmatic records for at least 6 years. If anything comes up with these, any kind of litigation claims or anything involving these records arises, they must be retained until resolution or until the end of that regular 6-year period, whichever is later. So just 6 years is the note to remember there. So transferability of funds. Jennifer spoke on this earlier, but LEAs may transfer funds into the Title IV funds into other SF programs. Of course, our goal is for you to learn as much as you can about the innovative things that you can do with Title IV to keep those funds in this program, but you do have that option to transfer these funds to other SF programs. But the funds transferred become subject to all rules and regulations for the grant that they are transferred into. And then the LEAs must consider how the transfer will impact those set-asides and transfer into Title I, and then, of course, those equitable services. So the State Department, the Title IV program manager must be notified in writing about the LEA's intent to transfer funds to another grant prior to submitting an application and budget. So that handout that you have outlines those transfer requirements. You must contact your program manager 30 days in advance with that form to then be signed by Jennifer to have us look over that, discuss it, and then you can move forward with uploading in GEMS and submitting your project. And then, of course, the transfer forms must align with the allocation amounts, and then upload and update as necessary. So with Title IV, you can transfer those funds into Title I, Title II, III, and V. With V, of course, that's if your district is a recipient of that funding. So the content area overview, there are 3 areas in Title IV and 3 different types of ways you can spend these funds. So this program is intended to improve student academic achievement by increasing the capacity of state educational agencies, local LEAs, schools, and local communities to provide students with a well-rounded education, improving school conditions for student learning, and then improving the use of technology in order to improve the academic achievement and digital literacy for all students. So there are certain percentages that must be met with Title IV funds. And we're gonna go over that here. And this is for those districts receiving above 30,000. You must do a needs assessment, which we'll talk about later on in the slides, and follow these percentage requirements. So here are the 3 content areas. You have your well-rounded area, your safe and healthy, and then of course your technology. So with well-rounded, you must have at least 20% allocated in that category. That's the minimum amount. And your safe and healthy, the minimum amount there is 20%. So then therefore you must not spend any more than 60% in the technology category. But if you have over 30,000, you must have something in each of these categories. The only districts that would not have to follow these percentage areas would be those districts that fall under that 30,000 amount. So with technology, there are more rules to follow with this one. 85% in this category must be spent on technology-related PD. So that's what you need to think about with this category. It's not about buying infrastructure and letting purchase of devices and that sort of thing. It's really about focusing on PD that's going to help develop technology proficiency in your district. So that's what you need to think about here is how am I going to provide technology PD? That's what 85% of these funds must be spent on. So within this category, no more than 15% of the portion used for this category may be for technology infrastructure. So what is infrastructure? That would be devices, equipment, software applications, different digital platforms or instructional resources, or other one-time IT purchases. So whatever you allocate into your technology category, just remember it's for PD. And if you are purchasing those devices, the amount within that category cannot exceed 15%. The only little caveat here would be if you are purchasing a software application or a type of platform that is needed to carry out a program that you have under well-rounded or safe and healthy, it would not count towards that technology category 15%, because you could then put that activity or program within the well-rounded and it would count towards that the 20%, right? So this is just for those, the 15% would just be if you're purchasing Chromebooks or something not really connected to a program under Title IV. Right. That would not, right. So whenever you fill out your GEMS application, and let's say you do have a program under well-rounded that's going to require some type of technology, if that technology is required to carry out that program, you can put it in the well-rounded category. So then within GEMS, it won't count towards that 15% infrastructure amount. So for example, if you are receiving $60,000 for Title IV, it might look something like this. With well-rounded and safe and healthy, you've met your 20% minimum here, with 15,000 allocated and well-rounded, and then 20% allocated and safe and healthy. And then you may want to allocate 25,000 in technology. And then the last two boxes kind of show you how that infrastructure would be broken down. With your professional development, you would need to spend at least 85%, which would be that 21,250. And then you could spend up to 3,750 on infrastructure. But again, we like to see that professional development piece within technology. And again, technology, if it's to be purchased, you can put it in well-rounded or safe and healthy if it connects to those programs. We just don't want you purchasing, laptops and things like that without that clear programmatic tie, but you can up to that 15% cap. So in your PowerPoint, you do have a link here to our most updated March 23 allowability chart. So that's a great resource. It includes all of the grants, Title I, II, III, and IV, V. So that's a really great resource for you to print out, kind of keep handy whenever you're looking at allowability for Title IV. So each of these slides has details on the content area. I'm just going to go ahead and move to that pretty chart that you see. It organizes it well, but if you want to go read more about each content area, you can look back at these slides. But everything is outlined here in this chart. So again, you've got your well-rounded education, so some allowed uses of funds for this area. Could be arts education, advanced learning, those AP courses, IB courses, things like that, dual enrollment, American history, economics, civics, and environmental ed go in this category, college and career counseling, foreign language, gifted education, physical education programs, professional development, social emotional learning, STEM and STEAM, and much more. So if you can justify how it fits in well-rounded, then you can put it in that area. If you ever have a question of where something may fit, reach out to your program manager, explain what the program is, say, will this fit under well-rounded? And we'll give you some feedback before you submit it in your GEMS project. So for safe and healthy, community partnerships would go under this category. Maybe conscious discipline, dropout prevention for your high school students, mental health services and counseling, parent and family engagement activities, PD, those PBIS, behavior programs, physical activity and wellness, and then any kind of restorative justice programs can fit under safe and healthy. And then with the effective use of technology, again here, PD for teachers, students, and administrators to effectively use technology. That's what we're looking for. Blended learning opportunities, flipped classrooms, independent study, technology integration, PD, and then technology infrastructure, which could be subject to that 15% cap. I was just going to highlight what was on this previous slide, but the program funds can also be used to help educators learn how to use technology to increase engagement for your ML learners and students, and communication with their parents and caregivers too. So any kind of assistive technology as well. Okay, so changes to the GEMS program details page for the new ones. This will be all new information for you. But with the GEMS page, you'll see here that we do have some validation messages that will pop up if you don't meet some of the requirements on these program details pages. But what we're going to be looking for, and it gives you these reminders here. All 3 activity areas must be supported with the amount and description provided. And the amounts assigned to the well-rounded, safe and healthy must meet that 20%. And then, of course, some of the funds must be spent in technology. And then there's that reminder here about the funds specific to infrastructure could not exceed that 15% for technology. So then here, this is how you are going to enter your technology category within GEMS. So here it says in the field to the right, you're going to enter your total amount for the effective use of technology. So that's your infrastructure, if you have any, and your non-infrastructure. And if any portion of this amount is for infrastructure, you'll check the box below right here and enter the portion that is for infrastructure only. So that's really for you to self-check too, to make sure that you're not exceeding that 15%. And then you'll come over here. So here's where you'll have your total amount. And then you're going to come over here and type in what is going towards that educational technology PD piece. So, and it gives you that reminder that 85% of the educational technology funds in this category may be used to support professional learning to enable the effective use of technology. And then again, it gives you that infrastructure reminder. So here you would come in and explain what PD you're giving your teachers that's connected to the effective use of technology. You'll outline it here. And then if you have those infrastructure items, any kind of devices and that sort of thing, software applications, you would then check this box and type in the amount that you calculated for those infrastructure items. And then you're going to list the infrastructure items that you have within your budget on this page. So the needs assessment. Title IV is a needs-based program. So the LEA should prioritize the distribution of funds per the approved application and to schools served by the LEA that are among the schools with the greatest needs. So this is a needs versus the wants program. We need to focus on our needs, like Pat talked about yesterday. And it's easy to focus your allocation dollar amount with Title IV by the nice to have things, the innovative things we want to try, but just make sure that you are connecting it back to your needs assessment for Title IV, and that we want to ensure that everything is connected to the student support and academic enrichment needs within your district. There is flexibility and room for innovation, but just make sure that everything connects to that demonstrated need. All right, so again, with your program development steps, you do need to convene your stakeholder group, determine your needs, and then find your allocation. Consider any kind of budget constraints you might have, develop outcomes that meet your needs, and of course, develop your data collection and evaluation methods, and then develop your activities that achieve those outcomes you're looking for. So with your needs assessment stakeholders, you've seen who you can have on those teams throughout the last 2 days, the teachers, principals, other school leaders, instructional support personnel, private school administrators, parents, students, community-based organizations. So just make sure you have a complete team to determine your Title IV needs. So your needs assessment must be comprehensive and examine areas for improvement related to those 3 content areas: well-rounded, safe and healthy, and technology. And you want to make sure that you're selecting those evidence-based activities that are more likely to improve your students' outcomes. So with your plan for implementation, such plans typically include the following components. And I know some of you may have asked some questions about logic models, and we're going to get into some examples of logic models as well. But a logic model is just that visual component that really helps you connect your needs and activities to your intended outcomes. It kind of helps you map through everything. I really like the logic model method. I think it's very helpful to even show to your stakeholders and have those conversations. It's just that visual representation of where you are, what your needs are, and helps you to determine your benchmarks and then your intended outcomes. But you'll need to make sure that you have those well-defined measurable goals with your implementation timelines, and then your clearly outlined roles and responsibilities for people involved. That's very important, including the people responsible for the activity's success. You'll need your identified resources required to support the activity, and a process to monitor implementation, and then, of course, an outreach strategy to engage your stakeholders. So with your logic model, this is suggested. Okay, if you have a logic model that you've used in the past and doesn't include all of these components, as long as you are really outlining your needs, your activities, and how you're getting to those short-term outcomes, if you have a different logic model that you prefer to use, that's fine. You can talk with your program manager about that. But typically, logic model components would be those inputs, and that would refer to the features and people in your LEA who are impacted by the intervention. And then your activities represent the program itself. Of course, your benchmarks, which are very important, like Pat discussed yesterday, those would be individual outcome targets that students need to meet in order to consider that intervention successful. And then you have your short-term outcomes. That's what happens soon after your program implementation, how things are going. And then your long-term outcomes. That's what you're going to be looking for once the intervention is finished. This is an example that Pickens shared, I guess it was last year. So I wanted to share this with you again. So what they have outlined here, their problem, and then that was the graduation rate in Liberty and Pickens attendance zones. And then they had their sub-problems, what they were seeing, the problems as a result of the main problem. They had their goals, which was to increase the graduation rate from 80 to 90% and decrease the dropout rate to less than 2%. So then over here, they had their objectives. They came here and outlined all of the activities. These are everything that we saw in the budget outlined here. And then their output measures, what they were going to be looking at, right? What were their benchmark data points. And then their short-term outcomes were outlined here, and their long-term goals were set there at the end. So you can follow this model. There's also this example where they have, this follows the exact logic model components that we just discussed. They have their inputs, their main problem, which is the percent of ML students who progress toward the proficiency target, the sub-problems as a result of that. They outline their goals here. They wanted to progress towards the proficiency target, 19.7 to 49.7. We had their objective here, the activities that they were planning to include in their budget. They were going to be looking at the test data here. They had a benchmark for the first year, a benchmark for the second year, and then the third year. And then I guess it's cut off, that's why I had. And then at the bottom, if you've got this, it has their short-term outcomes and then the long-term outcomes there for the percent of ML students who progress towards that proficiency target. Okay, and then the last logic model example was the same format. This is the same district. So you don't have to only, create one logic model. So I wanted to show this to you because the way they did it was by problem area. In my brain, it makes the most sense that way. So you can outline the goals that you have for that specific program, what budgeted items you're going to implement and purchase for that specific problem, and then have those individualized benchmarks for those budgeted items. So this one was about the learning environment. and the physical environment and homeschool relations needed improvement. So again, they outlined their sub-problems, they set their goals, they created their objectives, they outlined the activities that they were going to input in their budget, how they were going to measure that, specific benchmarks here, followed by their short-term and long-term goals. So again, this is just that visual representation for you to help outline what your needs are, what the problems are, what specific activities are going to address those problems, and what you're going to use to determine that you have had a successful intervention. So then, once you have developed your logic model, you need to make sure that you examine and reflect how things are going. So the final step for improving effective implementation is to examine how the activity is working and then use that information to make decisions and next steps. So make sure that you do have that performance monitoring and those rigorous evaluations and answer questions about the impact of an activity and your outcomes. And these activities produce information that should be used to guide future investments. If something's not working, take it out. Don't purchase it again the next year. Revise and go back to the drawing board with your stakeholders. Yes, so the survey that you just received, the Title IV survey, was based off of the logic model that you created for your 23 application. Yeah. The survey just to determine, yes, how things are going, any kind of revisions you need to make, maybe what changes you're going to do moving forward with your 24 plan. So we do want you to make sure that you follow that continuous cycle of evaluation, asking those questions, organize your evaluation, create those goals and benchmarks, design your measurements and indicators, carry out your evaluation, and then of course report your results with your stakeholders, and then do it again. So make sure too that you have that focus on the implementation process. Don't just have these programs implemented and then hope to have them work by the time you're looking at your outcomes. You want to make sure that you're evaluating them along and along. I know that can be hard, so make sure you have the right people in place to help you with that process evaluation to determine if the activity is working as intended and if it's going according to plan. And then, of course, your outcome evaluation would be, did the activity have the intended impact, and did it accomplish what it was designed to accomplish? So you've kind of done that process evaluation piece with that Title IV evaluation. You kind of looked at what you've done and what you might need to change before moving forward. That just highlights more of what I've just talked about. So also, you may have gotten this handout at our last Title IV session, but it's linked into your PowerPoint, and it's an innovative activity action planner resource. So this gives you questions to talk about with your stakeholder teams to make sure that you are taking the right steps for creating those innovative activities. So you can print this off. It gives you some questions and guides you to coming up with innovative activities for Title IV. The links aren't working? Okay.
We'll have Eric will take a look at that when we get back. We didn't realize that we converted, so we can thank you for looking.
Yeah, we'll make sure that you get those. And then some additional resources. I don't know if y'all can click on those. But we'll make sure to send you a link to these or post them on the website so that you can access these resources. Okay. All right. It's a lot of information. Do y'all have any questions about Title IV? Any of the content areas, the percentages? Yes.
Hold on a minute, say it in the mic so she can hear you.
Private school for Title IV, you calculate it like you do Title II, the full enrollment, not like you do Title I. So it's similar to Title I stated, but getting, but still for private school, you calculate it as primary enrollment for an SF program.
Any other questions? I think we're gonna move into Title V.
I wanted to say one thing about Title IV before we move into REAP and then finish our day. I said this recently and I can't remember where I said it, but I need to talk about gaps for Title IV, 24 Title IV for just a minute. So especially if you're finance and you're here, if you'll tune in to me for a minute. Title IV requires that we do a lot of public reporting. We have to do CSPR data and we have to send a lot into them. They are really into this, really are interested. They have a whole team. We have to meet with them very often. And so what we have found is that when we are trying to do the data on our side, we need a little bit of help from you. And that help is going to come from gaps. And so when you get ready to submit a claim, correct me if I say anything wrong, Sarah pulls this documentation for us, but we need for you to identify in the little narrative box which content area that is coming from. So say well-rounded, whatever it is, in the little narrative box, okay? So that way we can go in and pull expenditures and know which content area we're looking for so that we can do our reporting. I sent an email out about that, I think is what it was. So please know that that will take place for 24 at final allocations for Title IV. There's nothing in gaps right now, but in October it will be. So I just need you to designate what content area you're claiming from to help me when we pull expenses. We ran the gamut of what gaps would do, and it would, this is what we came up with that we're gonna have to go forward with. I'm sorry. Maybe when we get into our one system, maybe that looks like we'll have something else going on. Okay, but thank you. Okay, we're gonna do reading, and then we're gonna talk, and then we'll go home.
Okay, we're back.
Good afternoon again. Good afternoon again. My name is Sheree Mosley. I am responsible for doing the allocations. I'm also a program manager, and I guess I'm also kind of like official, unofficially, the Title V person as well. So, overview of Title V, REAP is what we call it for short, the Rural Education Achievement Program. The purpose of Title V is to address the unique needs of the rural school district that frequently lacks personnel and resources needed to effectively to compete effectively for federal competitive grants. The grant is non-competitive, and the eligibility is determined by statute. Awards are issued annually to the State Department of Education. And then once we get it, I do all of the magic, and then I produce the allocation for you guys. Title V programs. Part B, Title V, ESEA authorizes REAP. There are two programs under the REAP grant. You have the SRSA, which is the Small Rural Achievement Program. But then you also have the RLIS, the Rural and Low Income School Programs. South Carolina is a RLIS state, so. Yeah. Eligibility for RLIS. A local education agency is eligible to receive Title IV funding using the following criteria. To be considered, all schools comprising the LEA must have a school locale code of 32, 33, 41, 42, or 43. These are assigned by NCES. You can, check the website to check your districts. To be considered low income, 20% or more of your children ages 5 to 17 served by the LEA must be from families that are below the poverty line. And of course, that data comes from your U.S. Census safety. Here you have a list of the REAP sub-grantees. All districts do not qualify for REAP. Qualification is not determined in our office. Again, U.S. Department of Ed uses their own set of data measures, poverty. Usually I provide the previous year's Title II and Title IV final allocations, and we submit that to the U.S. Department of Ed, and that is how they determine the districts that are eligible for the REAP grant. Needs assessment and application. A needs assessment must be conducted for your REAP grant as well. The assessment should include those as, Title I, you got your stakeholders, your teachers, your administrators, parents in the community, personnel members, anybody that, would be feasible. The assessment summary, a narrative should include discussion of the data. The online application should be based upon that needs assessment, and guidance from the U.S. Department of Ed should be followed when developing that plan.
As we talked about doing a comprehensive needs assessment or one large assessment, we have a new validation message put in Title II and Title IV and Title V, asking you to make sure you put in a needs assessment. So please make sure as you plan and you're looking at the need that you put the needs assessment in each of those grants, otherwise you're going to get an error message.
Supplements are not supplanting. Title V funds may be used only to supplement educational program activities provided by the state and local funds. Title V funds cannot be used in the absence of these funds, which would be provided by state and local funds. Allow the use of funds for Title V. Grants awarded to LEAs under the subpart can be used for the following grants. You have activities for Title I Part A, Title II Part A, Title III Part A, 4 Part A, and parental activities. Here you have some examples based upon that allowability. Activities include teacher incentives, professional development, technology, and here's an example based on high quality preschool or full day kindergarten to facilitate the transition from early learning to elementary. And parent involvement example is the creation of a parent advisory committee. Here are some examples of allowability for Title II. For instructional staff, you have administrative salaries, fringe and benefits, supplies and materials, travel, and we've also provided an example for this as well. High quality PD, professional development to train teachers, principals, and other school leaders in technology, student data privacy, parent-family engagement, academic readiness, experimental learning through observation, etc. Here are some allowabilities for Title III. Activities to support upgrading program objectives and instructional strategies, improving instruction for multilingual learners, immigrant students, and an example here is supplement PD for teachers of multilingual learners. And Title IV, support activities. You got well-rounded education, safe and healthy students, effective use of technology. And an example here would be digital resources for students in remote and underserved areas. New and improved use of funds guide. You can check out the U.S. Department of Ed. They have a pretty dynamic website. They have tons of resources on there. For Title V, you can filter, you can search activities by topic. Anyone who is the coordinator for Title V, I would recommend just checking out the website. They have a lot of really good information and ideas on there. And here's also some additional links. I'm not sure if these links are working. Okay, good. The allocation process. In November each year, the Department of Ed provides what's called the initial eligibility spreadsheet. It is on a website that I have access to, max.gov. And that information we provide, as I told you earlier, we provide the allocations, the final allocation for Title II and Title IV to the U.S. Department of Ed, and we also provide the ADA, which is the average daily attendance for each district. We have to provide them with 2 contacts, and this information is submitted to the U.S. Department of Ed no later than December 5th. Once completed, and that this process between the initial eligibility and the master, it could take months. It literally is a process of going back and forth, of trial and error, of changing locale codes, or whether a district is eligible or no longer eligible. And so usually, I can give you for instance, we just received the final master eligibility spreadsheet, but we submitted this information to them since December of 22. So it does take some time for that information to be finalized. Transferring of funds. Section 5103 of the ESEA permits an LEA to transfer funds from the following programs. You have Title II and Title IV. Sections 5103 allows an LEA to transfer local funds into any of the following programs. You have your Title I Part A, which is improving basic programs operated by your LEAs, your Title I Part C, migratory children, Title I Part D, which is your ND, neglected and delinquent. You have your Title II, supporting effective education, 3, English language acquisition, Title IV, student supported academic enrichment, and of course, Title V Part D, rural education. Action steps. An LEA may transfer all or a portion of the allocated funds under Title II, Part A, and Title IV. An LEA may transfer funds at any point during the 27-month period of availability into the grant for the same fiscal year. An LEA may only transfer funds into that program for which they are receiving an allocation. We do have some districts that say, well, hey, I want to transfer my funds into Title V. And that's fine, but what the caveat to that is the Title V allocation is not given out until maybe mid-October. So we don't know whether, we can't just assume, even if you received the Title V allocation the year before, we don't want to assume that you're going to receive one this year because anything could change. And so in order for you to be able to transfer anything into your Title V grant, we have to make sure that you're going to be a recipient of that grant first, which means that grant has to be awarded to you in order for you to do that. And LEA must engage in timely and meaningful consultation, determine the progress of which funds are being transferred out and into, determine the amount in federal fiscal year the funds being transferred, establish effective date of transfer, notify an SCA at least 30 days. Margaret hit on this earlier. Lord. Martha. Her name, her name is Martha. It's the inside joke and no, her name is Martha. It's Martha. We call her Martha, but it's Martha. Lord, forgive me. Where was I? Determine the amount in federal fiscal year funds, notifying us at least 30 days before the effective date of the transfer, and submit no later than 30 days after the date of the transfer. Here's a resource link for you, a fact sheet for transferring for state and local funds. We ask that, and that is something that you desire to do. Of course, you can find a fact sheet there to assist you in that. Any questions? All right, I'm turning it back over to Jennifer.
Title V really is like an extension of some of these other grants. When you get ready to do Title V, if you're a recipient, you'll do a program details page, and it will ask if you are looking to do activities that look more like Title I, Title II, Title IV, so on and so forth. So it's like an extension to the arm of these other grants. Okay, now I want to know how you're feeling at the end. Take a minute and talk about it with each other. Anybody feeling like the squirrel? Anybody feeling like the roaring lion? Okay. The lion sings. Anybody feeling like a cute little kitty? I'm kind of peeking your head out. I know that today was just a great big overview. But I am very hopeful that you'll take the slides home with you and kind of do a deep dive into what you're working on and into your planning, into what is submitted and into what is active. So if you are a new coordinator, you need to go into the 23 grants and compare the notes that we have been over and the slides to what's going on in that active grant right now. That will help you tremendously. And as it has been said for 2 days, we are here to help you and support you. You just give us a call if you have questions. This is our contact information. Thank you for coming and giving us your time. We appreciate it, especially those of you that have driven quite a ways to be here. Yes, you can.
So registration, and everything will be with that, having delays, so normally by now everything is up and running, but something was done in July, registration will be done. So if we look at that, October the 24th to the 27th, that is a new condition.
Thank you, Jane. Wonderful conference. If you've never been, you need to see if you can go. Okay, Title I can pay for it if you're a federal programs director or Title I coordinator. All right, if you would, please make sure that you throw away your trash and clean up your table before you leave today. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you for your time. Safe travels.